Okay, that little beep means we are in business. And away we go. Flip the rudder down. We're out here today because I'm hungry. Specifically craving some trout. Some summertime trout. A lot of places, you know, in the Midwest, we're in Minnesota right now, your trout fishing access is stocking. So these are like put and take fisheries. The trout come from a hatchery, they stock them in May, you can catch them all summer long and all winter long. But you know, they typically don't put trout in places with public accesses per se. They're public waterways, you know, you can access them publicly. Difficult to get a decent sized boat into, which is why you see me in the old trusty kayak yet again. So it's easy enough for me to just drag this kayak off the road into the lake and slap my lithium battery in and away we go. So the program today is trolling for trout. And you know, you can go around the lake and cast and maybe catch a few fish, but by far the most effective way to catch fish is by trolling. And some people get intimidated by trolling for trout, thinking that you need downriggers and cowbells and planer boards and all this. I'm telling you, no, you don't. This lake is about 90 feet deep, and I'm just using a little Rapala Shad Dancer here. And this thing's only diving down about 6, maybe 8 feet, depending on how much line I let out. That's all you need to do. So if a trout is down in the lake, presumably in the thermocline in colder water, looking up, they're gonna see a silhouette. I mean, think about a trout who's also down there looking up at a tiny insect on the surface of the water. It's pretty easy for these things to see them. There isn't a ton of food in these lakes, and so they'll take what they can get, especially when there's competition from other trout. So it seems kind of silly, but no weight, no planer board, no downrigger, no cowbell, just a little tiny crankbait, throwing it behind the boat, behind the kayak. Might open my bail for another 5-6 seconds. It's really not going to do anything. Close the bail. Now, the beauty of this is obviously, look at me. We're moving right along. My crankbait is engaged, digging down there, doing its thing. I don't have to worry about using a paddle to get momentum. I don't have to worry about drifting. I don't even have to worry about pedaling with my feet because I'm in an Old Town autopilot, which has a Minn Kota trolling motor in it. So that's light enough, easy enough to get down that hill in this kayak and out on this little lake. Battery, trolling motor, kayak, hands-free fishing, here we go. So the moral of today's story is essentially going to be speed control. Like I said, paddling, pedaling, super easy to dial in consistent speed with a motor. So what I got my prop on 2.5 right now, I can probably bump it up to 3. That way we're covering water, my crankbait's getting down there, wiggling away. So this is really all I have to do. Basically set it and forget it. I'm steering with my feet, so right foot this way to turn right, left foot this way to turn left. And that way, you know, if you saw contours or something, you can follow contours tightly. But more or less, we're just gonna zigzag this crankbait through the water column until we start encountering fish. Oh, woo. There you got one. Wasn't sure how big it was at first. Oh, little treble hooks and squirrely fish. Ooh, don't want to put a ton of pressure on them. And the mono helps with that a little bit. Ooh. Ugh. What do you think? Should we net them or just go for it? I feel like this is a bad idea. Yep. There it is. Oop. Trolling trout. Slippery banana. Trolling trout right there. We're out in the middle of the lake right now. 90 feet of water or something. He got it good too. Bust out my little tiny, oh yeah, way down the hatch. like that. On the board, you know, I'd say there really isn't a rhyme or reason to where you target these fish. They're just kind of out over nothingness. There might be a particular point or steep shoreline, a weed line that they might like a little bit better, but literally these fish can be anywhere and they are anywhere. So again, the trick is covering water, trolling a crankbait. We're on the board. You know, as far as setup goes, I'm not expecting to catch any giant, scary big trout. I'll add on that real quick is, you know, in Minnesota you can keep track of the stocking of these lakes and you can tell whether they put in yearlings or adults, which adults are often brood stock and they can be big breeders from the hatchery, and those can be pretty big fish. I'm not anticipating catching one of those. You might say I have a horseshoe if I catch one of those. But anyway, the run-of-the-mill fish that I'm gonna catch in here are pretty much exactly what you just saw. You know, like teens, mid-low teens, maybe a big one being like 18, 19 inches. So, you know, a couple pounds. So I don't need any big, heavy, crazy, long rod or anything like that. You know, this is a 7-foot light, fast action rod. This happens to be a St. Croix Legend Elite, straight 6-pound mono. I don't need nothing else. So I'm not dealing with swivels, I'm not dealing with line-to-line knots. And just straight out the reel, through the guides into the crankbait. So light action, that's gonna have enough bend in it to give that crankbait the action that it needs. It's also gonna have the forgiveness when those trout hammer on the rod. And I don't need to pick up a ton of line quickly because generally I'm just drifting with the fish and catching up with them. So don't need a huge rod either. Obviously this is a light little setup. It's a great setup for casting for trout in a lot of scenarios too. So to reiterate, 1,000 size spinning reel, spooled with 6-pound monofilament. This happens to be Suffix Elite in the green color. 7-foot light power, fast action rod. You know, one lovely thing about this, you don't need to know any special wrist movements, techniques. Ooh. Now, it's weird, sometimes you can feel some kind of like water displacement when a fish misses your bait. I kind of have a feeling that there's a lot of smaller fish that were stocked this year that aren't quite getting my bait because I'm feeling a lot of like crankbait just feeling a little off, getting bumped by stuff that isn't quite getting hooks. But anyway, you don't need to know like any special technique or like, oh, he's the fish whisperer because he can work the bait a certain way. We're literally obviously just dragging it and the crankbait is doing the work. So that thing's just down there, bill just hammering away. And you basically just sit here and feel what the crankbait's doing. Now that being said, every once in a while, I'll pop the crankbait on slack line. If there's a trailing fish or if there's fish nearby, that's just gonna draw a little bit more attention. So you can easily overdo it, you know, don't do it all the time, but it's a good idea to give it a little pop, change up the action a little bit, draw some fish in from the area, or trigger a reaction strike from a trailing fish. If you're looking for one extraordinary advantage of an autopilot kayak, well, look at us now. I'm sitting here, again, hands-free fishing, trolling motor's doing the work, and I'm towing my girlfriend around at 1.5 miles an hour. She's tuckered out, trying to catch up to me with the paddle, and now she's just leeching on and coasting along with me, so.
No arguments tonight.
I can fish and hang out with my gal all at the same time. It's a win-win, right? Here we go. Here we go. There we go. It's kind of the golden hour now, so there's fish rising all over the place. It's only a matter of time before one found the crankbait here. Oh, they scared me. They got soft mouths and treble hooks. Again, you gotta have a rod that absorbs that shock. Monofilament line. Look at him just digging down there. Come here, buddy. Let's try to keep him down. Not hook great. Come on, buddy. Still a lot of life in that fish, but we got him. There we go. crankbait trolling for trout an hour after work. With my girlfriend Erin with me. Pretty much a leisurely evening, wouldn't you say?
I think so. Having fun.
So these are perfect little trout for the grill. Nothing too big. Leave the skin on, no need to fillet them or anything. A lovely, nutritious fish dinner.
Does this mean you're making dinner tonight?
That means I'm making dinner tonight. Yeah, that one's going in the box. You know, one little handy thing about this remote fob is I'm obviously controlling the trolling motor with it. So I can control the prop speed, but it also gives me miles per hour. Why is that important? Well, if I find that I'm getting bit more often at 1.5 or 1.8 miles an hour, if I feel like my crankbait or whatever lure I'm using is running better at a certain speed, I don't have to guess what that speed is. I know exactly what my speed is just by looking at my fob here. So for example, in this calmness, 2.5 on the prop speed and 1.5 miles an hour seems to be kind of the ticket. So, you know, whether the wind comes up or I hit some current or something like that. Ooh, there he is. He jumped way back there. He's just jumping like crazy. Whether there's current, I can maintain that speed constantly. Obviously, I just shut the motor off. Oh, did he get off? That fish got off. So yeah, the beauty of that too is I can just shut the motor off and fight the fish without dragging it and further risking, you know, maybe getting that hook out. Probably should have hit that a little sooner. Lesson learned. But again, that's kind of the beauty of, again, we're dialing in our speed. Something to take note of. Kind of starting to hit sunset, and there's so many fish rising because the wind is obviously laid down, literally rising everywhere, and I don't know if their attention is focused a little bit more on the surface or not. I was thinking maybe I needed to switch colors, so I had my, whoop, that's a pretty jump, and my tackle box on my lap. Come here. Tackle box on my lap, just about to switch colors, something that might be contrasting a little bit more in this low light. And guess what? We got, oh. Well, we just snuck out after work real quick. Pays to look at the forecast because it's been kind of windy today. But if you look ahead on the hourly, we were anticipating that wind to die right about the time that Erin and I got off work. So lo and behold, the weatherman was right. We got a flat, calm day, perfect conditions to get the kayak out and catch some dinner or breakfast. What do you think?
Both.
A little bit of both. We have enough fish for both. So yeah, these are just the perfect little eater-sized trout. Again, this is a put and take fishery. So they're meant for you to chow on, and chow we will. So, super easy to access lakes that don't necessarily have accesses. This little lake got a bunch of trout in it. Good luck putting your big fancy boat in here, which leaves a lot of room for guys with canoes and kayaks to come out and access these fish. Now, if you really want to dial in and get advanced, get into an Old Town Autopilot 120 and troll your way around, hands-free fishing. So if you're a serious fisherman, one of these kayaks is definitely going to allow you to pay more attention to your presentations and less on your boat control. So that'll about do it for us. Got a little bit of a ride back to town. The sun's going down. That's trolling trout in a kayak.
It's been fun.